Hello and welcome. You're watching Newsx with me, Devika Devan. Our top story tonight centers on the enduring controversy surrounding the late financier Jeffrey Epstein, as newly released congressional records continue to expose the deep and sustained connections he maintained with global public figures well after his 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution. The latest documents originating from Epstein's private communications have focused a harsh light on Deepak Chopra, the globally renowned author and proponent of New Age spirituality and wellness. These records confirm a pattern of email exchanges and calendar appointments between Chopra and Epstein, primarily dating to 2016 and 17. While Chopra's representatives have maintained that his contact with Epstein was solely professional, concerning the solicitation of funding for his consciousness research and at times providing advice on sleep and meditation, the content of the emails has ignited fierce scrutiny regarding the Guru's judgment. Most notably, a November 2016 exchange surfaced where Epstein forwarded a news article about a woman dropping a civil lawsuit that alleged sexual assault against both himself and Donald Trump. In response, Chopra specifically asked, and I'm quoting here, "Did she also drop the civil case against you?" After Epstein confirmed the case had been dropped with a reply saying, "Yep," Chopra responded simply, "Good," in another email from July 2016. And remember, this is nearly 8 years after Epstein had become a registered sex offender. Chopra asked Epstein for information about Marla Maples, the second wife of then President Donald Trump. "Anything we share is between us," wrote Deepak Chopra, "and I share nothing with anyone but trust you," was Epstein's reply, with a personal anecdote about a $10,000 bet he lost to Trump over Maples' pregnancy, noting he sent Trump a truckload of baby food as payment. That brief but ethically charged exchange has dominated news cycles, prompting widespread debate over the moral compromises that have been made by prominent figures who chose to associate with a known convicted sex offender. Yes, that's the bottom line. Further correspondence reveals the two men discussing other high-profile individuals, including Donald Trump, his ex-wife Marla Maples, reinforcing the persistent reach of Epstein's network into elite circles. Chopra has publicly stated his desire for the full truth to emerge and has offered cooperation with authorized officials. However, tonight we ask, when the nature of these connections becomes clear years later, what really is the cost of association, and where does accountability lie for those who offered validation to a predator after his crimes were known? Those are some important questions to answer. I'm going to begin with Brinda Dighe, also with me Professor Madhav Nalapa, the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. But let me begin with Brinda. Brinda, we do expect more and more names, of course, to keep emerging out. But the question then we have to ask ourselves is, what really is the accountability when it comes to, like I said, validating a predator?
Look, Devika, if you had watched the testimonies of some of the Epstein survivors who basically were bold enough to appear on television and even give their name, then they showed photographs of when they met Epstein and when their life of horror started, and many of them were young as 14, and the old was about 16, and it is really heartrending to watch them as they could not hold back the tears. And then you had Virginia Jeffrey. Now she committed suicide allegedly. Now a short while before that, she had told an interviewer, who had asked her, "Have you given the names of prominent US politicians in your book?" And she said, "I'm not suicidal." And lo and behold, a few days from then, she quote unquote commits suicide. Hardly believable, but that is another case that has been just buried under the dust of them. I'm very happy that the Epstein files have been released, and now it's up to the Department of Justice of the United States to make sure that the Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, does not suffer the same fate as John Mitchell, the Nixon White House who tried a cover up. Bondi has an obligation to the people of the United States, not to any individual, certainly not to Donald Trump or to any other individual. It's to the law. She has promised to uphold the law. Well, that means revealing all the files, quote unquote, ALL, no matter where the chips may fall. So it's now up to her, 30 days, and frankly, I think a lot of people are scurrying for cover, and I think it's good that these names are coming out, and I hope that Bondi acts according to her conscience rather than according to her immediate convenience, and understands her responsibility to the nation, the United States, and in fact to the whole world, who would like to see what kind of predators are these people who prey on children who are as young as 14 years old. And I mean, as for Deepak Chopra, well, frankly, I'm one of those who don't buy the story that he was doing meditation with Epstein. If Epstein was doing meditation, he's not the kind of person who he became if he were really doing meditation. The obvious explanation is that Deepak Chopra was another, I mean, unfortunately, another predator, let's be honest. And I'm very happy these names are coming out, and I do hope that Pam Bondi does the right thing by justice, by the scales of justice, the right thing by releasing all the files. And I underline the word ALL. She should release all the files when within these 30 days that she has been given.
Okay.
Devika.
All right, Professor Nalapat, I'll come back to you. But Brinda, let me bring you into the conversation. Basis what Professor Nalapat has said, then I have to ask you, like I said, more and more names will come out, we all know. Given the magnitude of the Epstein case, does one now imagine that every name that's coming out should be viewed as a predator simply by association?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Because we know that this is not something that started a year or two ago. It has started from 2006. And he is a known sex trafficker and a child sex trafficker. That said, we've had children, victims and survivors who have come and deposed. Thankfully, the only saving grace over here is it is happening in the US. So the names that are tumbling out of Indians or those associated with our country, one cannot say that, somebody went for meditation, somebody else went for some yoga or something like that. But those kind of things are very naive. And to thrust it on the Indian people is also unacceptable and wrong, because we know what their actual businesses are. So knowing these businesses, and Epstein being whatever he is and whatever the kind of businesses that he was doing and the kind of liaisons that he has been having, it's business people, it's politicians, it's actors, it's everybody. And we've heard those depositions from the children. That means we cannot simply just say that, oh, they just came for a checkup, he came for a counseling, he came for a chit chat, just having tea. No, I think it is time that these cases with the names that are coming out be viewed as sexual predators. I'm sure all of these people thought that they can get away. It's somewhere happening out there, and it is also pretty sophisticated. It's not some small time person doing it. It is someone who has the clout and has that political patronage, because this guy Epstein could not have done all of this without that political patronage and the kind of power and money that these kind of influential people get. So even the people's names from India, all of them thought that it's never ever going to come out and that they would have some kind of an excuse to make for it. Now that it is sitting in court, I'm sure that these depositions from the children, from the young people, and all those who have been forced to service these sexual predators must be viewed, looked at in that light only. And I'm hoping that the Indian government is not going to shield or cover any of these perpetrators who are named in those files, that they will not have to depose here, but they will have to go to the US and depose. Because if anything happens over here, you and I know what happens in our courts, and there will be no predator who will be brought to justice. No punishment will be meted out to these people. So I think it is but right for us to look at them, view them as sexual predators. I don't think we should go by our Indian, innocent until proven guilty. If these are names that have been associated by this man, who is a who's known for all the crimes that he has committed against
Yes.
children, especially sexual crimes, and I think we need to look at it just in that light.
Okay, Sumit, bringing you into the conversation, your thoughts on the same as well, Sumit, as far as some of these emails have emerged. And when we look at the very specific timelines, years after Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender, he was a registered sex offender, a lot of people from the so-called high society continued their associations with him. What does then one even make of, this sort of a culture where you as a so-called high-profile individual are able to turn a blind eye to some of the most heinous crimes another person has committed?
Devikaji, thank you for having me on your show. Well, ma'am, it's an interesting question because you have raised what happens and why. The answer is very simple. We know this crime, this sin, has shaken the collective conscience of the world. We all have kids. We all have been kids somewhere down the line. And can anybody imagine your sister or your daughter or your loved one to be in such a situation wherein sexual exploitation was happening at an industrial scale, and all these people who were coming like those vultures and trying to snatch away anything and everything? It was like sorry to say, it was like when you pick an animal from an animal market. It was as bad as that. And anybody who goes there and says, "Mujhe nahi pata tha, I didn't know what happened, I just was going there for this and that," they all knew what was happening. And this is a worse blot to humanity because it was done in such a brazen way. It was done on an island thinking nobody will catch up with us. We are the biggest and the most powerful people in the world. Our power to put together can shake a government. It can bring a government to the power. We can buy out a country. If we can do that, who the hell can come and question us? That was the mindset when these people went. And it is even horrific to think. And all these people whose names have come and will come, I think they should not be seen as humans. They should be seen as something which have some kind of a diseased brains, and they have some kind of a disease which they're suffering for. And if they could go to this extent, we all know this paid sex in the world, but if you could go and you could exploit people in a literal island, kids in an island, and have your fantasies settled, that means you are not worth to be calling as humans. Whoever they may be, we know there are a lot of names there. We know there are a lot of people whose names have come in. Ultimately, you cannot get away with it. Look, they knew who this guy was. But what they ever thought, this man is so big, his cloud is so big, and you look at other, oh, this one, ye bhi aaya tha. Okay, this one is also there. This one is also there. Arey, I can also go there. What is the problem? That is the problem. And these people thought they can never be caught. The law of the land or the law of the world will never ever reach them. They thought they were harams once upon a time in those, with the kings and sultans, and Genghis Khan had those concubines. They thought we could do it in the today's century. We could literally pick up those kids and turn them into those slaves of the haram. That is exactly the concept was. It was a very squid, very dirty, and a very filthy thought they had. And all the people who went there, they were a part of the same thought process. Now, your question specifically, Devkaji, why were they in touch with that man? Because this man can spill too many beans. If he would have not died in a prison, if he would have lived, there are a lot of things which could still come out. Now, I don't know how much of we can still get it. Maybe we get the tip of the iceberg. Maybe we get 70-80% of it. Maybe we get 100% of it. Will America, which holds liberty, fraternity, and justice as the Statue of Liberty, will they come up to the occasion? Will they tell the world, yes, it happened here and we are accountable to the world? Or will Americans just sleep over it and do a hogwash and say, "Bhai, we released it and nothing really came out of it"? The world is looking at it, and anybody whose name comes in the list, you can do a mistake. You fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Okay, I don't know the guy, I went met him once, but once I see, I know who the person is. If I ever go there second time, if there is association with the person second time, then obviously I know what he's doing and I'm a part of the game. I can't say, okay, I went there for a yoga class, meditation, trying to school the Lucifer. Well, that doesn't happen in the practical world. You can have a mistake once, but if you're there at the second time, then it's all gone. Now, in today's world, if you meet wrong set of people, it's like, I was going to jihadis and terrorists, I was teaching them moral science. Will that work? I'm a moral science teacher. Then Hafiz Sayyid and all are moral science teachers if we go by logic. Then what is the difference? Hafiz Sayyid is also teaching them some religious teachings. So he will say, I'm a teacher, I have nothing to do with terror. Now, the problem is that if the world sees them like that, the world then has a serious problem. And these people are going to make sure that he's in a happy mood or to see the names don't come out, their deeds don't come up. They all wanted him in practicality to die and everything to go to the grave with them. But unfortunately for them, the things have come up and a lot of things are to be expected. Now the world will see how much of the truth will come up. And this truth is going to be ugly, this is going to be disturbing, and this is going to be filthy. I'm using the word filthy because this is what I think 99% of the people in this world will not like. This is what 50% of the gender, that is women for sure, will not like. This is what 99% of the other gender, male, will not like. I'm not talking of the balanced 1%, जिन्हें हम राक्षस कहते हैं. They might like anything. So the 99% of the humanity is not going to like this and is not going to stand by it. Now what Professor Saab rightly said, now the Miss Bondi has the right and the duty to bring out the real truth. We'll be all looking to it, and if there's a cover up, if there is wishy-washy, we can understand all the pictures we have seen, all the names we have known, all the whispers which we ever heard. They are all right, and that is where the cover up is.
Yes, absolutely. Ambassador Kapoor has also joined us. Ambassador Kapoor, I want to understand, sir, from your perspective. When we talk about accountability, what does it really mean as far as this particular case is concerned? When we talk about Deepak Chopra's accountability now, simply by association, where does this stand? And what do we now make of some of these names that are coming out? And the fact that these people continued to speak to Epstein, even though he was a registered sex offender, what does this really say about them? Do you think that they were quiet because the case was too large and they felt that if we don't speak up right now, maybe we'll get away? Or there is something larger to hide and more sinister, and that's what keeps you silent in such matters?
Well, it's a very, very dark saga, very shameful episode which has transpired, and the women who have suffered so profoundly in the process, it's very unfortunate. And our sympathies are with them because their lives have been shattered, their lives have been impacted very, very negatively. I missed out on the earlier panelists, what they have said, except for a little bit about Sumit Peer, my dear friend, what he has said so correctly and so beautifully. So I think as long as we learn some lessons and then understand how we should move ahead in the future, that is what is most important in such incidents and such very, very ghastly sort of events which have happened. For the people who were associated, it is something which is unpardonable to continue to be associated with a person who has been convicted already of this pedophilia and all the other criminal acts which he has indulged in, which came out in the open, and then you continue to correspond with them. And now you're saying that you were doing meditation, this thing with them to what end, I don't know. But I think they have to atone also. They have to look inside, they have to reflect, they have to introspect. They have to definitely do a lot of meditation and see how they can mend their path for the future, so that they do not either do such things themselves or associate themselves with offenders, with sex offenders who have been involved in such activities and acts. So I think it's also the other aspect is that one should not really try to make it political like in the US, where I am currently in Washington, D.C. They're talking about Democrats who have been associated and Republicans who have been associated. I think this is not a aspect of politics. This is an aspect of morality. This is an aspect of ethics. This is an aspect of values. This is an aspect of systems. So how do you mend the system so that such activities are not able to continue or to foster in spite of all the money power that goes behind them? So how do you change the system? So it has to be a bipartisan approach, like in the bill which was passed for releasing of the Epstein files, for example. It was passed almost unanimously except for one dissenting vote in the House of Representatives. So that is a sort of unanimity which is required in terms of future actions. I am feeling very sad sitting here because what I see is all the focus is on the blame game, the name game, the shame game. There is no focus on the future, on the correction, on the steps ahead, on the next steps, on the path ahead, on how do you go ahead to a better future, so that this sort of, like you have in Britain, the grooming gangs, where a lot of non-Islamic women are being groomed for similar sort of this thing by the Muslim youth there, and very little action is being taken to protect those young vulnerable women who could be Caucasian, who could be Hindu, who could be any race or religion. Now, how do you stop those things from happening blatantly and covering it up is what has to be seen by the communities, by the societies, by the countries, and by the world. And there is a UN Commission on Women. I think they need to take it up as one of their primary agenda items on how to safeguard the interests of women all over the world.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I feel that's a forward-looking thought that we can wrap up this conversation on. Of course, like I said, very disturbing news continues to pour out as far as the Epstein case is concerned, but we don't know, with all the red tapeism, with all the secrecy, whether we'll ever know the entire truth. But on that note, I thank all of our guests for joining us to take this important conversation forward.